All right, so this Cybertruck explosion in Vegas, huh? I mean, it's a crazy story.
Yeah, between the social media stuff and like no one really knowing what's going on.
It's hard to even know where to start, but
Right.
we're going to try to do that today
Yeah,
using this press conference that the Las Vegas Police Department gave to
exactly.
try to piece together, what we actually know versus what's just speculation.
It's like a puzzle with a bunch of like missing pieces. So
Yeah.
we're trying to like figure out, what we can actually put together.
Exactly. So we have the Cybertruck explosion in Vegas, right?
All right.
So many questions.
Oh, yeah?
Um, but we have to start, I guess, with the person of interest,
Sure.
Matthew Livelsberger.
Right. 37 years old.
And even just identifying this guy seems to be...
Well, it's really tough because of the condition of the remains they found.
Yeah.
It makes it hard to get like a visual confirmation.
Okay.
For sure.
But they did find, a ton of evidence pointing to this guy.
Oh, yeah, a lot of evidence.
The rental agreement for the Cybertruck was in his name. They found credit cards with his name on it, his passport, military ID.
They even have surveillance footage of him driving the Cybertruck.
Oh, wow.
So they're pretty confident it's him.
So even without DNA confirmation at this point,
Right.
it seems pretty clear that this is our guy.
Yeah, I think so.
But then things take a really strange turn.
Okay.
Because the coroner's report says that Livelsberger had a gunshot wound to the head. And this was before the explosion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
There
then
you
to
go.
make things even more complicated,
Yeah.
they found a handgun at his feet inside the vehicle.
So was it suicide? Was it something else? Was it foul play? There's
Yeah.
so many questions now.
Yeah, it's like a whole new...
It gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah, a whole new set of possibilities, and then you add on to that.
Right.
This guy's military background.
Okay.
He was U.S. Army, a Green Beret.
Hmm.
He was stationed in Colorado and Germany. He even did deployments to Afghanistan.
Deployments can be so stressful, and you have to think about, the possibility of PTSD
Yeah.
and whether that played a role in this.
Especially because this isn't the first time we've seen something like this with a veteran.
Right. Remember that incident in New Orleans
Yeah.
a couple months back?
Yeah.
Some pretty eerie similarities.
Yeah, both Green Berets, both served in Afghanistan.
Exactly.
But it does seem like just a coincidence at this point.
Right. They haven't found anything directly connecting the two guys.
Yeah, they didn't serve in the same units.
Nope.
Or even at the same time.
Right, at different time.
But it does make you wonder.
Oh, for sure.
Well, let's go back a little bit and see if we can trace Livelsberger's steps
Okay.
leading up to Vegas.
Sure.
And investigators have been able to put together a very detailed timeline of his journey.
It's pretty impressive what they were able to find.
Yeah.
So he rented that Cybertruck in Denver and then stopped at charging stations all across Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. I mean, they have records from Monument, Trinidad, Albuquerque, Gallup, Holbrook,
Wow, he was all over.
Flagstaff, Kingman.
It's crazy to think, knowing what we know now, what was going through his mind during that drive.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
What was the point of all of this?
was he running from something or to something? What was going on?
Yeah.
So his last stop before Vegas was in Kingman, Arizona, early in the morning.
Right.
And then just a few hours later, he shows up in Vegas.
Wow. So it's a pretty straight shot from Kingman to Vegas.
Yeah, not too far.
And thankfully we have some surveillance footage
Okay, good.
to track his movements once he gets there.
So we can actually see what he was doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they have him entering the city on Fashion Show Drive and then pulling into valet parking at the Trump Hotel.
Huh, interesting.
And they even caught him driving along the Strip.
On Las Vegas Boulevard?
Yeah, so...
He's driving around.
Yeah, he's going to pretty high-profile places.
Yeah, like he's not trying to hide or anything.
Right. It doesn't really seem like the actions of someone who's about to,
Yeah, you would think if he was trying to stay under the radar
Right.
that he wouldn't be going to these places.
And they said his last known location was a parking lot near Flamingo.
Okay, and from there, we don't really know what happened.
Right.
Until the explosion.
Yeah, it's like he just vanishes
It's a total blank spot.
and then reappears in the most dramatic way possible.
Right.
And it's that gunshot wound. I mean, that's really what throws everything off.
Yeah, for sure, because if he wanted to take his own life,
Right.
why rig the truck to explode?
Why not just use the gun
Right, exactly.
to...
That's a huge question that investigators are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Some people think that maybe the explosion was a way to, like, make a statement,
All right.
like a last act.
Like he was trying to send a message.
Yeah, maybe, or even, like, try to cover up the real cause of death.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It's possible.
Yeah. And then you have this whole military connection, too.
Great.
Both Livelsberger and the suspect in New Orleans were Green Berets.
Yeah.
Both served in Afghanistan.
Right. Could there be some shared experience, some trauma that led to this?
Yeah, it's hard not to think about that.
Yeah, but we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Of course.
You know, just because they both served in Afghanistan doesn't mean they're connected.
Right.
Their deployments were years apart.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence that they even knew each other.
Right. But it is still a pretty big coincidence.
Yeah, it's definitely a coincidence.
And it makes you wonder,
Could there be something else going on?
Yeah, could there be something related to their service?
Yeah, some kind of trigger.
That we just don't know about.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
For sure.
And I'm sure investigators are looking into all of that.
Absolutely.
But for now, we have to stick with, what we actually know.
The facts.
The facts.
Right.
Which is that he planned this very meticulously.
Very carefully.
He went to all these charging stations. He ended up in Vegas.
Right.
And then something happened.
And that's what's so interesting.
Right.
What changed?
What happened in those last few hours?
Yeah, to meet with someone.
Would something make him change his mind?
Right. Did something happen that made him do this?
Yeah, or was he being followed the whole time?
Ooh, that's a good point. Was someone tracking him?
Right.
And just waiting for the right moment?
It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
And I'm sure investigators are exploring all of these different scenarios.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they're looking at everything.
But it's frustrating, right?
Yeah.
We have all this information about his trip.
Yeah. Such a detailed account.
But his motive
Right.
and the circumstances of his death are just totally unclear.
It's a mystery.
It's like a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
And that's how these investigations go sometimes, We don't always get all the answers.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to figure it out, right?
No, exactly. We should still look at the evidence.
Yeah.
And consider all the different possibilities and be critical thinkers,
Yeah.
We might not get a clear answer.
Right.
But we can still try to understand what happened.
And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting.
Fascinating.
They're like trying to solve this mystery right along with the investigators.
Exactly. We're all in this together trying to piece it together.
Yeah. And as new information comes out,
Right.
we'll be here to break it down.
Absolutely. We'll keep you updated.
But until then, keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
And, don't believe everything you see on social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah. And sometimes the most important piece of the puzzle
Right.
is the one that's missing.
It's true.
It's just crazy to me that we have all this technology. We can track people across state lines. We can see them on camera. We can even find out all this stuff about their past.
And yet we still don't know why.
We know what happened, but we don't know why it happened.
Exactly. It's like having all the pieces of the puzzle, but the picture is still blurry.
Yeah, we have timestamps and locations and surveillance footage, but the most basic questions are still unanswered.
Right. Like, why did he even go to Vegas?
What happened in those last few hours?
And how did he die? I mean, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's almost ironic,
It really is.
We have more information than ever before, but it doesn't feel like it makes things any easier.
Sometimes I think the more information we have, the less we actually understand.
It's a good point.
This case really shows that.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that we can't just blindly trust the data.
Right.
We have to think critically and question our assumptions.
Especially with all the stuff flying around on social media.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in all that and jump to conclusions.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think we just have to wait for more information to come out.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we can still think about what we already know.
And try to make sense of it.
Exactly. Look at it from different angles and accept that there might not be a simple answer.
It's like we're putting together a puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing.
And we might never find those missing pieces.
But we can still try to figure out what the picture looks like.
Right. And that's what this is all about.
The truth.
Yeah. Even when it's hard to find.
So for everyone listening at home, this is far from over.
It's just the beginning.
As new information comes out, we'll be here to analyze it.
And help you understand it.
But until then, keep those brains working.
Don't believe everything you see on the internet.
And remember, sometimes the most important part of the story is the part we don't know.
That's very true.